everyone, and welcome down to big episode number 20 of the Down South Photo Show. With me, Brendan Waits, and my good friend down in Tasmania, down south there in Tasmania, in Hobart Town, Cam Blake. Hello, Cam.
G'day, Brendan. It's all happening down here in Hobart Town. It's going off like a frog in a sock.
Hobart's where it's at.
It is at. It's always at Hobart. There's always something going on down here. Photography-wise, anyway.
Well, you are in the photographic epicenter of the universe.
Yeah, it's pretty close to that. Having said that, I've been watching a few episodes of our mate Photo Tripper, and he's in British Columbia. Jeez, I'd like to go. Jeez, I'd like to go there.
Yeah.
That looks like a pretty special place.
You know, it's funny though. If you maybe showed him some shots around Tassie, he'd probably go, wouldn't mind going to Tassie.
Yeah, that's true.
'Cause we all sort of not take for granted, but we sort of get tangled up in our own backyards.
Yeah, we do.
And you go, oh, isn't it nicer over there? Well, it's pretty nice where you are, actually.
It's always wanting what you can't have.
Big round of applause, episode 20.
Yeah.
Up for us.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's
got to
good.
mean something.
That's
right.
Well, again, that's 19 more than I thought we'd ever do.
Episode number 20, and sorry for the little gap in getting these episodes out, because we had a little bit of fun last week, didn't we, Cam? It was very, very cool. We're going to get to that. Going to get that in a second, but we have just cruised on past 210 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, and heaps more on Podbean. I think 2 weeks ago we had our 1,000th download via Podbean, which is pretty cool. Yeah,
oh, did you tell me that?
I probably didn't.
1,000 downloads.
Yeah, not that we. It's not about the numbers, Cam.
No, but I've downloaded at least 200 of them. You've probably done the other 200.
Yeah, I've got a big family.
Yeah, that's awesome. I must admit, I've been getting little bits and pieces, little snippets of people saying, "Hey, I listened to your show; it's really good. Love the banter between you and Brendan, and really love the topics and stuff like that." So we're getting a lot of feedback sort of filtered through, which is great. So thank you to everyone who listens. It's great.
Absolutely, and I concur. I've been getting similar kind of reactions to the odd punter coming into the shop, and hey, I heard your podcast. I really liked it. Yeah, that's cool. That's nice. Yeah. Would they tell us if they hated it? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I know a guy on the west coast of Tassie. It might.
Anyway,
moving on.
We'll see if he pops up during. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Episode 19 last week and a half, or whenever we did it, when we spoke about female landscape photographers, was very well received. So thank you for everyone who gave us feedback, who listened to the podcast, who shared it around other female landscape photographers. That was awesome. And
special thanks to Mika Boyton. She tagged a hell of a lot of female photographers, Australia and worldwide, and I literally was drooling for a couple of hours. I went through some of these photos, and there was a lady in Wales, I can't think of the name now off the top of my head, there were so many of them, but she did some of the most incredible misty sort of foresty shots, which I love. So thanks, Mika, for tagging all those people in there. It was really well received, lots of female photographers to go enjoy. It was great. We had a great response from that, and who knows, we still haven't worked out whether there's going to be a co-host in the next episode when I'm not here, but we'll see what happens.
Anything could happen. We will work on that. As always, we just sort of roll on and let it. It's organic. It just happens, whatever happens. Now, the reason why we didn't record last week was because we were due to record last Thursday night. And as you can see, if you're looking on YouTube, or if we're in your ears or on your car stereo, that's going to be a bit hard. But car stereo,
picture
1980s that.
Picture this. Don't do car stereo. You can run YouTube through car stereos these days.
Well, you can do all kinds of stuff.
If you're driving and watching at the same time, don't.
Pull over and have a look at our backgrounds, because we both have Aurora Australis.
Yeah, we do.
Give it up for us.
Yeah, it was good.
We were so lucky because I know Cam gets Aurora Australis a little bit more intensely because he's further south, but this one was a blinder. This one was a very, very strong one.
It was.
Would you say the strongest of the last couple of years, Cam?
Yeah, I think out of the ones I've seen and captured, I would say this is probably in the top 3 of intensity and colour and duration. Sometimes you get like a real spark for about an hour and then it just dies off and that's it. This one, I know I was shooting from sunset through to, I know people down here were still out at 4 o'clock in the morning and it was still firing off. So, definitely one of the more productive ones. And it was great.
And it's pretty cool that we've got our photos up side by side here because you can see the difference. So I'm
iPhone.
How many? No, that's on a fair income camera, that one. But we'll talk about that in a minute. How far north of you am I? Like 400 k's?
Hobart. It's about 500. I think it's 4 to 500 k's north.
Right, 400 to 500 kilometres, and you can see, and let's pretend that our photos were done at pretty much the same time, because they wouldn't have been that far apart.
No, they wouldn't be.
No. And the difference, I mean, we've both got those sort of the pinky, purpley hues going on, but if you have a look at the horizon, that's where Cam gets the green stuff. And
we get the good stuff.
I don't think I've ever seen the green stuff in Victoria, but I stand to be corrected on that.
I've seen a couple of shots actually from Mount Buffalo of green stuff.
Okay.
So being up high and a bit more
elevation.
Yeah. But yeah, we certainly get what we call like the ribbon, and that ribbon moves, so it doesn't stay stationary. It actually comes further and further in and out type of thing. But the shots that we were getting down where we were, so for people that are looking at my shot in the background, this is taken from the Remarkable Cave, which is pretty much as south as you can go almost on the Tasman Peninsula, further past Port Arthur. But we could actually see the sun was setting and we could see the Aurora going. So the sun had just set and we could see all the beams starting to kick off and the ribbon and stuff like that. So, but it went up, it went down, it went bright, it went dull. At one stage there was a lady there and she thought that off to this side of the shot, she thought there was high beam lights coming over the hill. And I said, that's just the beams. Like they were that prominent. It was pretty incredible. We had a nice little platform of about 8 people when I got there, which got bigger and bigger as the night went on. Yeah,
that's awesome. As far as my experience, I've never photographed one, so I was quite excited. I don't know why I've never been out and done it. It didn't really overly appeal to me much early days, and I guess a lot of people went out and did it. So I looked forward to seeing the photos that would invariably pop up on social media the next morning.
Yeah.
And we'd already put a line through recording the pod, so I thought, well, okay, I've got a chance here to sneak out and do this. And then I got a phone call from my mate Wes, who I know is a watcher and listener. Wes from Lonnie Snaps over in Point Lonsdale, at about 10 o'clock. And he just said, are you out? And I said, no, but I'm thinking about it. And he said, stop thinking.
Get out.
You don't want to miss this.
Yeah.
So, and he was right. So what I decided to do was try and get to somewhere where no one else was.
Yep.
I'm not a huge fan of crowds when I'm trying to take photos. I don't like putting myself in that experience. I get too distracted and invariably get a lot of questions. So I went to, I think these steps behind, well, you can just see the top of the steps in the bottom of the frame. The full image, which we might put up a bit later, I might put a few photos up as I'm talking here, Cam.
That sounds pretty tricky.
I don't know if I can do that, but if they're magically appearing right now, good luck to us.
Yeah.
So I positioned myself at the stairs at 11W.
Yeah.
So all the
could you see it from 12W?
You could see it from all the W's, but the reason I chose 11W was because that is one of the harder ones to get to, of furthest from the car, and therefore you got to walk a bit further in the dark. So I thought, right, that's going to be. That'll be for me. So I snuck down there. Lo and behold, not a soul there, and got to work. And having had a fair bit of experience with long exposure photography, I teach it, and I listen to this guy in Hobart a lot, and sort of read up a bit on it, and in the past, and I managed to nail some shots of it. So I was absolutely stoked. So what I thought we might do, Cam, is talk through some of the settings and stuff, because I know we get bombarded with questions about settings and stuff, which will overlap later on with our Dear Cam question, I believe, as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now,
it's an Aurora-themed episode.
It is. It's full Aurora-themed episode because why not? It's fresh in everyone's mind.
That's right.
So personally speaking, the shot that you see behind me was shot on my trusty Canon 700D. We love Canon here at the Down South Photo Show.
That's why they sponsor. Oh no.
Not This episode is brought to you. No, it's not.
No, it's not brought to you by
Canon 700D with my Sigma 10 to 20 f3.5. Now I own two Sigma 10 to 20s, both f3.5 versions, one for Canon and one for Nikon. So I took my the Canon 700D down there, set it up on my heavy tripod. So I took my big old awesome Manfrotto 055 X Pro B, which weighs more than me, so I literally dragged it down to the beach and set that up. It was a little bit breezy here, so I wanted a good solid base to shoot from. So pro tip number one, good solid tripod, particularly if you've got a bit of wind around, because you're going to be doing long exposures. Now,
that's right.
I immediately started playing around with exposures. In fact, what I did, I set the shot up, I pointed it where I thought was south. I looked for the Southern Cross, and if you can see, I'm going to try and there. Right over my shoulder, that be the Southern Cross right there. So I pointed at Celestial South and hoped for the best, because I couldn't really, it was hard to see because it was dark, but I could just make out the very faint glow of the Aurora. So this is the thing, right? To the naked eye, no, it doesn't look like what you see behind us. Okay, and to the non-photographers who have been commenting on Facebook and things like that, you know, one lady immediately commented and said, "Oh, can I see it tomorrow night?" And then I was very careful to say, well, you might be able to see it, but we could only just see this. And the difference is the long exposure times with the SLR cameras that we're using, and we expose the sensor to the light for a long period of time. And I was finding the best exposure time for me was 30 seconds. That worked really well. I tried it at, first of all, about ISO 400. That was okay. And then I went to ISO 800 and wrapped. Got what you see behind me. So and then just really started playing with different exposure times and different compositions. So the stairs were awesome. I was doing photos further back, getting more stairs, more sky. Obviously the sky is where it was at, all that sort of stuff, but you'll also notice I've got the waves in front,
the waves breaking
really. So, and you're looking at 30 seconds there, so would have been 2 or 3 sets of waves would have rolled through there in that time. So that's what's created that pretty. And is that
the lights on the horizon? Are they fishing vessels, oil rigs?
Yeah, ships at sea. I'm gonna say no. It wouldn't be King Island. It's I'm gonna say shipping. Shipping, because it's the shipping channels right there. So
that's right.
So it was so cool. I was just and I got really excited because the very first shot I took. Wow, there it is. I can see that colour, and
it's an amazing buzz.
And I think I messaged you
you did.
I hadn't been that excited behind the lens for quite some time, thanks to COVID and all the bullshit that's been going on. But it was just, I was like, oh yeah, right. I get it. I can see what the buzz is about to capture.
And that's why
that's
why I replied, wait till you come down here, because, like you said, I'm 500 kilometres north of you, and south. You're north of me.
That's right.
Someone's north of someone. If you keep going, if you keep going north, you'll end up coming to me anyway.
True. Eventually.
Anyway, because we're so much further south, again, we get the same question. People sort of say, "Oh, can you see this? What's it look like? Does it look like this?" Now, I've seen auroras from the mainland very, very long time ago versus the ones down here in Tassie, and the shot you can see behind me. It looks like that, just without as much colour. You can actually see the individual beams moving. You can see the rhythm. Can't even talk. You're the one drinking. I can't even talk. The green ribbon down below, down the bottom, that moves. You can actually, once your eye adjusts, you can really see it moving.
I think that's what I found as well. Because I was literally on the edge of Ocean Grove town, I had a fair bit of light pollution behind me. So
that's right.
I think if I could have got myself way down to like Cape Otway or something like that, that would have been a different story. But
Phillip Island's a good one. Wilson's Prom's a good one. So my settings on mine, again, I've shot a lot of Auroras, so I dial in a simple setting and it generally works most times. So I just go wide open. So this is at f2.8. ISO, I usually start at ISO about 1600 because I just want to get an image straight away to see what's there, like just to really make it bright. And then I was shooting, by the time I got everything set up after a few frames, I was shooting at f2.8, ISO 100, and about 10 seconds. It was bright. Like it was really, this Aurora was really bright, and the main ribbon down the bottom there, that was actually blowing out in some of the highlights of my shots. So I actually dialed it down. I think a couple of shots were even like 4 seconds and things like that. So, but yeah, it's a different experience when we're further south down here because we do get that ribbon, and you can see the beams a lot more prominent. And we also on the back here we also have Milky Way. The core of the Milky Way came straight through the middle of this, and I've actually got a shot which we might show on the screen if we can organise ourselves. I've actually got a shot from this same spot with the sun setting in the bottom corner over here, and you got the leftover orange and the green and the purple and everything like that. So it was a strong one. But yeah, it all depends. Like if they're big strong ones like that, you don't need really long exposure times down here because you really are almost under it. It's really quite bright, but.
Yeah, so I was sort of, as I say, toying around with the exposure times and trying to work out what was best. And you're completely right. But because it's a little weaker here in Victoria, I needed slightly higher ISOs to begin with, and then I was going higher ISOs and dialing back the shutter speed to try and get something sort of looking kind of correct. But I was shooting on a half frame camera, so a half frame camera, a 700D. So I was getting the dreaded noise issue because I had to shoot at the higher ISO. Now the image you see behind me, I've reduced noise in Photoshop. That was pretty much the only. So when it came to editing these photos, for me, it was just playing with the exposure slider a little bit. I also, as I say, knocked back the color noise and the overall noise as well. And then it was just a matter of probably a little bit of contrast, but did not touch saturation. And this is the thing where I think some people sort of, I don't know, they're a little bit miffed by it all. It's like, oh, well, you've just grabbed the saturation slider. Well, no, not in this case at all. That is as true to the color as I was getting out of the back of the camera with those 20 and 30 second exposure times. Yeah,
exactly. And the contrast is what kicks in the color. The saturation slider does nothing. It's the contrast, and so I'm the same. I play around with the exposure a tad. The shadows you don't need to touch because it's black. You don't need to worry about it anyway. Contrast, and I added a little bit of noise reduction. I shot this on the Olympus. So I added a little bit of noise reduction through there, but really out of camera, this is almost what I was seeing out of camera. It may be slightly darker, but the color was all there, and the contrast was all there. Again, it's just knowing the situation, and like you said, a lot of people they sort of get a little bit miffed by how the color is picked up and why doesn't our eye see that color. Well, the cameras are seeing some incredible, a lot better in the dark than what we do. And we're turning the sensitivity, we're cranking the sensitivity up with these sensors, so they're going to pick up even more color and contrast and detail than we are. So I think people get a little bit miffed that that's not what they saw with their eyes, so it can't be real. Well, it's just one of those things where the camera picks it up a lot better than what the human eye does.
It's not like it's not there.
No, that's right.
It is there, and if
go ahead. I was going to say, even with this one, I think from memory, I haven't got my Lightroom open. I think I actually reduced the saturation like by -5 or 10 or something like that because the ribbon was blowing out some of the bright areas. I was playing around with the highlights a little bit. It was really intense color. So I know there's been an incredible amount of engagement with one of my posts on my Facebook page from a person who sort of tried to call me out that I was making things up and creating things that weren't real.
Look, it's disappointing, that kind of stuff, and I know 9 times out of 10 you wouldn't bite, but I don't blame you this time because that dude went too far, man. So,
if you go,
we won't name names on here, but if you follow Cam on Facebook, you would have probably seen it. So
and it's
pretty ordinary.
I've got no issue. No, I'm not, for anyone that knows me, if someone says, "Oh, what's the raw image look like versus this?" I'm quite happy to share that because I do not edit much. I don't over edit. I don't over process. And this person just decided they wanted to get abusive and say a few words. And like I said, that's a one-way city to get blocked from seeing my work ever again. So they're gone. But it was just funny how out of a bad thing comes a good thing because there was so much engagement, so many questions, and so much knowledge was shared through the rest of those posts about the Auroras and what they can look like and how to shoot them and things like that. But they are an amazingly phenomenal thing to have. Phenomena. They are, that's right. Phenomenal phenomena. But a little story about when I was where I was down here. I told you I was going to I'll tell you
Yes,
a little
please.
story.
I like cam stories. Settle in, everyone.
Settle in, grab a coffee, grab a beer. So this was down at the Remarkable Cave, and I'll give a shout out to Paul Broben. So I don't know if Paul listens, but he should. But Paul's from the Gold Coast. He's a working photographer, old school photographer, works in media. He's actually employed by media as a photographer, which is rare as hen's teeth these days. So I rocked up to this little platform where this shot was taken. There was about 6 people there, and 6 or 7 people. And I'm a bit like you, Brains. I don't like to just ponk myself in the middle of a crowd. I just try and get my own little space and set up. So I set up, and as I said, I just took a few shots at the standard settings, ISO 1600, 2.8, 15 seconds, see what happens. And Paul, as I became to know Paul during the night, he came over, he goes, "Oh, hey, mate, how you going? And, what's it looking like?" and things like that. And sometimes you go to places and you sort of expect Mr. Know-it-all, Eddie the expert, to come over and tell you how to do your shots and stuff like that. You sometimes can run across a few of them. But he was just curious. He was from the Gold Coast. His daughter was there. She was freezing her ass off. She had about 1,600 layers on. Anyway, we got a few shots, and I actually went there with a purpose to go down this track and shoot down an inlet of this Remarkable Cave, which worked in the end, which we'll put the photo up maybe as well. And Paul and his daughter said, "Oh, do you mind if we come with you?" I said, "It's only 5 seconds down the road, so just walk down the track here and we'll get set up." So Paul's telling me about the work he's done. I'm telling him about the work I do. We're sort of trading war stories and all that kind of stuff. And it was quite dark, and we set up a few shots of this little inlet. It was really good, and his daughter was complaining about how cold it was. And in the dark, I could have swore this girl would have been 15, 16 years old, whatever. So we started talking. I said, "Oh, and what do you do?" And I went to say, "Are you still at school, or do you work?" Just general chit-chat. And she goes, No, I do this in Gold Coast, but I'm actually a retired Olympic athlete." And I went, "You what?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, hold the phone. Don't worry about the Aurora. What's all this?" And she's a silver medalist in the 10-metre platform diving in the London Olympics.
Fantastic.
Brittany Broben. She,
at 16, remember the name.
16 years of age, and won a silver medal at the London Olympics. So shout out to Paul and Brittany. It was lovely to meet you guys down there.
She was one of the darlings of the Olympics for our team in 2012, I remember. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, how about that?
There you go. And she's now 26, 27, doesn't look a day over 16. So we went from talking about Auroras and watching the show to just talking about this incredible achievement this young lady had done. Sort of put everything that we'd done to shame. And sort of walked up the stairs, got a few shots, and they were staying down Tassie. They'd literally come down from the Gold Coast to try and capture an Aurora, and they hit the jackpot.
Wow.
They really hit the jackpot.
So,
Paul and Brittany, lovely to meet you. Hopefully they're tuning in. But yeah, it was just a really one of those crazy nights where you're there for one reason and you learn something completely different about a complete stranger. So,
well, for those listening, a natural progression here would be to talk about how we know when an Aurora might happen, but we're going to save that for the Dear Cam segment a little later on, because we have had a question about that. So we'll get to that later on. But just with regards to a little bit more about settings and stuff about when you're shooting Aurora, I was talking to a mate of mine who shot it as well. And he was like, "You wouldn't believe it." He goes, I'm there. I've got all the settings that I normally have, and for the life of me, nothing. I'm just not. I couldn't work it out. Like everything was underexposed. And he said I was going through every menu, and then I realised I had my neutral density filter still screwed to the front.
I was going to say, does he have a circular polarizer or his lens cap on?
No, the ND. So, and he's a pro photographer. Everyone does that kind of stuff. So we've banged on a lot on this podcast about gear and getting ready and what is it? The 4 Ps, prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. I think that's 5 Ps. Whatever. All the Ps.
That's a lot of Ps.
Yeah. Whatever. And, making sure, like, you get... I mean, I was so excited. I got down there. I was like, holy smokes, like, here's an Aurora. And then... Cameron, you've disappeared. Where have you gone?
I have disappeared. I'm back.
Oh!
My battery and my webcam went flat. Look at that.
That's kind of like that. Anyway,
that's a pretty good rescue there.
That was a good save.
That was a good save.
Podcast.
I
like it.
So
exactly. So point being that this is a guy that's been shooting. He's done Auroras before. He's got some awesome lightning stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then it took. I was excited, and I was sort of keeping it together to try, make sure you got it right on the night sort of thing. So, and even to the point where I had a photo shoot on Sunday, and I've taken the first 24 shots. Guess what ISO I was on?
Yeah, I did that. That was that story I told in one of the episodes about climbing up Mount Ossa, where we've been shooting stars the night before. It's so easy. It's so easy to do.
I hope this client likes noisy portraits because they got a few.
That's the film effect.
Yeah, of course. It was 60. Yeah, I think at that point I was at 6400 ISO. You beauty.
Yeah. Smile.
Yeah, that's right. So, so I know with the editing the raw file, you're not going to worry too much about white balance settings.
No.
Did you go just auto white balance?
So
or do you play around with that?
Well, this is the conversation that Paul and I had. This is what sort of started off our conversation on this platform. He said, "Oh, what are you shooting?" He goes, "I'm shooting at around about 5600 Kelvin daylight sort of." I said, "I just shoot in auto." I said, "If you're shooting in raw and you're shooting auto, then you're going to change anyway." I said, "There's no way you're going to go back to your computer, and there's no way it's going to be 5600 right. So you're going to play around with it anyway." So, and this is something that comes up a lot with workshops about doing Astro and Aurora stuff. Is like I look at yours, and your shot to me looks a bit warmer, and my shot looks a bit cooler. So some people like to have more of a warmer temperature with their Astro stuff. Some people like to have a cooler spot. I like to try and get my sky like a bluey, blacky sort of dark outer space type of color. Other people go different, but I shoot on auto and then tweak where I need to. And generally it's not bad. It's not far off the mark, but I'll generally tweak it more to the cooler side than the warmer side.
Yeah, and I think that it's more for the benefit of people who aren't au fait with editing a RAW file and maybe want to get just a good JPEG straight out of camera. So generally, I'm the same. Auto is fine because I'm going to tweak. But for beginners out there who want to know about white balance settings, auto for sure. And remember as well, when it comes to ISO settings as well, particularly if you're running, as Cam says, micro four thirds OM system cameras, or if you're running a half frame sensor like the 700Ds and your 850Ds and that sort of stuff. Using the higher ISOs will generally generate that noise issue. And Photoshop now is so good at not necessarily eliminating noise. It's almost distorts the image a little bit. And it does it well. But it's still an issue. I don't mind some of the. I mean, you can see my photo's still a wee bit noisy, which I don't mind. I think maybe it suits the star array or something. I'm not sure, but I didn't mind seeing a bit more noise. And the full frame of this shot, I've got the stairs leading down, and it almost like the timber of the stairs sort of shows up a bit better with a bit of noise. If that sounds
I ended up putting one of my files through that denoise AI or whatever it is. Topaz, yeah. And I haven't used that much at all, but it actually did a really good job. And you're right. Sometimes when you denoise things, they get that sort of bit of a cartoony feel. It's a bit like that B shot you showed me today. They get a bit of a feel like they've been over noise reduction or reduced, and you get a bit of that cartoony feel where there's a fine balance, and there's a fine balance with everything with editing. Your contrast, your saturation, everything. There's always a fine balance. If you go too far, it looks a bit out of whack and stuff. So denoising is the same.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is generally trying to produce a clean image. So, and noise is counterintuitive to a clean-looking image. So that's why it can be a bit hit and miss. And there are different programs, and I can tell you now, just because you might have Photoshop, it's worth trying a different like Noise Ninja or one of the Topaz programs or Nik software and all that sort of stuff. Because, believe it or not, an image that doesn't get cleaned up in Photoshop might get cleaned up in one of those software products as well. It's not necessarily one size fits all with noise reduction. And for those of you who don't know what noise even is, generally it's basically the pixels on your sensor giving off a signal basically, and they interact with each other. So when you shoot at higher ISOs, there's literally more power or more energy
heat
going through, more heat, everything going through your.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Going through your sensor, and the pixels interact with each other. So it used to be known as the signal to noise ratio, and then it's just got cut back to noise basically.
Yeah.
Grain is it's people compare it to grain. It's not really the same thing as grain because that's an analog versus digital system.
Yeah.
But it looks like grain in your photos. So
Yeah.
particularly you'll find it in the shadow areas. So you can see it
right.
in the ocean behind me. It's quite grainy in there, noisy in there.
Yeah.
So that's what noise is.
Yeah, in some of my shots as well, especially the inlet shot I did. There was really a really cool, like, big pebble rock beach in the bottom of it, which I was lucky enough to get a little bit of detailing. But if you get in there, you can see it's quite noisy because it's in that shadow bit. But noise is a hard one to get around. Even with the big medium format Fuji I had, it still had a bit of noise. Like you can't avoid it. If you go up to higher ISOs, like I said, you're generating more power and more energy through that sensor. The pixels are going to get a bit static and start talking to each other and create a bit of noise. Yeah, and I think
ideally, as a landscape photographer, 100 ISO is my friend. You're going to get a cleaner looking image, but of course, when you're shooting auroras, you're not going to shoot at 100 ISO. You're not going to get anything. So that's why you got to shoot at those. You have to shoot at those higher ISOs. But just be careful. You push it too far, and you'll get it to a point where it can't be pulled back. So
and again, that just goes back to that sweet spot. Like, there's always a sweet spot with ISO, and it doesn't matter. Like, every camera is different, but there's always a sweet spot where you'll think, you know what, that's really good. It's picking up all the stars. It's picking up the details of the Aurora, and I'm not getting much noise. If you push it any further for that, yes, you might get more noise and more detail, more stars and more detail, but you're going to introduce more noise. So it's sort of counterproductive in a way. So find a sweet spot on your camera, be happy with what it is, and then, like you said, Photoshop, Lightroom, Topaz, whoever it might be, there's programs out there now that you can really just add another layer of denoise on over the top, which will, and again, it comes back, what are you doing with your photos? If you're putting them on Instagram, like, you're going to have the noisiest shot in hell, and you're not even going to notice it on Instagram. So again, it's depending on what you're going to do with your images. It would depend how much noise reduction you add in there.
Yeah, and getting back to gear as well, seriously, you do not need a full frame camera. You don't need the latest Sony A7 Mark IV. Like I say, the Canon that I shot this thing on is 10 years old, maybe older. I don't know. It's 18 megapixels, half frame sensor. It's fine, people, totally fine.
So the question that everyone's asking now, in their car and in their home or sitting on the lounge watching this video.
I know where you're going with this.
Everyone's asking this question. Why did you not shoot this on the iPhone 13 Pro?
One very simple reason. I didn't have the frickin' mount for it. And I wanted to, and I left the mount here, and I don't have one in the van. And I tried to do the little balance thing and all that sort of stuff, but I couldn't hold it steady enough for long enough. So next time there's an Aurora, and we're going to tell you how to keep an eye on when Auroras are going to come, I'm going to do my phone, because Cam shared with me a phone shot of the Aurora that was done on a Samsung, I believe.
It was a Samsung, but that's obviously a lot better than an iPhone.
Oh, no doubt.
But yes, there was an iPhone, a Samsung shot of the Aurora. So yes, it can be done.
Yeah, no, it can be, and like I said, there's no reason to have all the latest and greatest gear to get these shots. The best camera is the one you've got on you. So
that's right. Yeah.
As I say, next time the Aurora Australis rears its beautiful head, I shall get down there with about 17 different cameras and try them all out.
And Brendan also said off air that if you are out shooting the Auroras anytime after midnight, feel free to call him personally on his mobile number to ask for setting advice. He will answer and direct you over the phone.
Naturally, absolutely. I'll be on the blower. I'll be down on the beach. So I actually ripped off a local photographer, Lachlan Manley's idea down here, and did a self-portrait at the Aurora as well, which I'm going to put up on the screen now.
You didn't do one of the ones standing looking at the stars, did you?
It's my first Aurora. Of course I'm going to do that.
This is my 100th Aurora, and I've never done that.
Cameron, you haven't lived.
Moving on. How's your beer going? What's the flavour of choice tonight?
It's the virus beer.
Corona beer.
Got the little, it's rolling out a little Corona. As I say, don't judge.
I was going to say, is there a Sydney brewery? Is there? Hello to everyone in Sydney. Congratulations.
Hello. Yes. And I don't think all the way through the podcast. Look, the reason we started this podcast really was because of COVID. I mean,
that's right.
We wanted something to do when we're all locked down and all this crap, and it seems to have sort of gathered a bit of speed and got its legs. Just wanted to give a shout out to everyone who's now unlocked, finally.
Which is everyone, isn't
we're free. Yeah, the whole country's unlocked. It's everyone's free. I haven't looked at case numbers for 3 weeks.
What case numbers?
It feels like we've got through to the other side. I know there's still a few speed bumps along the way, but it feels great to have a bit of freedom. And hopefully all the borders open soon and everyone can travel everywhere. Yeah. You can go to Uluru.
Yeah, you know what? I want to go to Uluru this week because it's meant to be bucketing down rain up there, and I want to get a shot with waterfalls in Uluru, but I can't because I'm going somewhere else. So that sort of sucks.
I think it's like the stats are pretty low. I think it's like 1 in 100 visitors see water on the rock.
It's
or is
not,
it even less than that?
I think it's like twice a year that it happens or something. 3 times a year.
My dear old dad used to run coach tours there.
Oh, yeah.
And, right. And he's seen rain on the rock a couple of times. Like he'd take school groups from Melbourne all the way through the Red Centre, and he used to send me not bad photos, but I don't know where I got my. I don't think it was from him. Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, sorry. Dad.
He's not listening. Doesn't matter. So I don't know how many times we've said the word Aurora, but I think we're done with Auroras for now.
Hey, here's a thought. Isn't there Aurora Energy in Melbourne?
What's that mean?
A sponsor. We can get a sponsor. Aurora Energy could sponsor this podcast.
Oh, okay.
We can get free electricity.
That's right. Exactly. Speaking of, now, I just want to rewind because a lot has happened in the last week and a half.
It has.
The night we recorded the last pod and there was storms and thunder and lightning, there were some awesome lightning photos generated. It was brilliant. We'll talk about lightning photography probably down the track. The next morning, Ocean Grove got hit by a pretty severe storm, and we had trees down left, right, and centre, trees across power lines. Could hardly get the kids to the school bus, let alone, and the school bus got diverted. Barwon Heads Road was closed. There was pine trees, big old pine trees, just strewn across the road. They lost about a dozen of them. Right. So Barwon Heads Road was closed for 2 days, but we had no electricity for 24 hours.
That's right. Your shop was closed, wasn't it?
I couldn't run Ocean Grove camera and photo for 24 hours. It was bizarre. It was just like, wow, how much do we rely on electricity?
It's like I've just come out of lockdown and now I can't do anything.
Yeah, have another punch in the guts. Luckily, the Torquay store had no power for half an hour, and they all got back up and running.
So you would have run over there and run that store, wouldn't you?
No, I had staff.
All right.
No, I actually did the right thing and went to a mate's place and jumped on his chainsaw and cut wood for a couple of hours, which was,
there you go.
Because he lost a couple of big gum trees in his yard, which was and he got really lucky. But this has got nothing to do with the podcast, so we shall move on. Second little topic I want to talk about before we get to the Dear Cam segment. We're tracking beautifully for time here. So there's a local Geelong-based magazine. I'm not going to name them because we don't name and shame on this podcast. We don't name and shame, but geez, this has piqued my interest, Cameron.
If they do it again,
we got an email. A Facebook post. So I follow these guys on Facebook, and I got a Facebook post from them, and it just said, "Calling all photographers, professional or otherwise, how would you like to take the cover photo for our upcoming magazine?" And I'm thinking, promising. Okay, well, that sounds all right. I'll have a bit of a look through. And I started reading, and basically what they want is a free photograph because all you get is your photo on the cover.
Yeah.
That's it. You get no payment. You also have to hand over the rights to that photo, and you have to basically sign off to say that they can use the photo. They'll tell everyone on social media who took the photo.
Yeah.
But that's it. And the cynic in me straight away just went, obviously you've got no budget for a photographer. Yeah. I didn't like it. It was just
But surely the exposure is going to pay your rent and put food on the table. Like that exposure, the people are going to be knocking down your door for photographs then.
Oh, of course they are. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
It was. I don't know. And I've started. There's a bit of a. hate to use the word, there's a bit of an epidemic of it. It just seems like these people think just because you get your photo covered, they clearly want a pro photographer's shot by saying, calling all photographers professional and otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever. They're going to pick,
the better shot.
Chances are it's going to be done by a pro photographer who's got the arse out of his or her strides, trying to bloody make a living.
Yes,
and they just want to pick up these images for free. And I guarantee you, they're going to show off more photos inside the magazine. It's just going to promote their magazine.
That's
and promote their advertisers without a brass razoo going back to old mate photographers. So
and the thing is, if you go to them and say, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, why aren't you paying people? They'll just turn around and say, well, you don't have to. It's not for everyone. These are the terms and conditions.
Yeah.
I've come across this quite a lot as well, and it does my nuts in as well, where they will, it all sounds lovely. It all sounds like it's all in the benefit, or at least a mutual benefit between the photographer and the publisher or whatever it might be. But you read the fine print and you literally get bent over a barrel for your work. And unfortunately, a lot of that has to go to things like social media, because people, these Aurora shots, the classic example, there's now on social media probably a good couple of million shots of the Aurora from the other night. Out of those 2 or 3 million shots that people put up, I can guarantee you at least 20% of those people will give that over for free to put on a magazine cover. So these publishers don't have to pay for anything. The value of your work, your value of the work's gone to shit, excuse my French, because
times have changed, haven't
crazy.
they? I mean, it's basically, it's now swung the other way. It's like, okay, well, there's plenty of photographers, amateur or pros or whatever, who are happy to just hand over these, which is at the detriment of the industry, because the people, as I say, that are professional photographers and rely on gigs like that, a paid cover shot gig could be anything from $500 to $2,500, so
that's right.
It was disappointing to see that they'd taken that approach, and they'd clearly only done it to get a freebie. There's no question. And a little part of me was like, well, if you had just said, we're broke, we can't afford a cover photo, can someone come up, I would have almost given them one. If they had been more honest and just said, look, the cost of keeping our magazine going is too much. And we'll give you some exposure. That would have been fine. But just to hide it behind a competition with no prize.
That's right. The prize is the front cover that you then don't get access to. And I've had a couple. Like I said, quite a lot of those instances. The last one I had was down here in Tassie. I was getting asked for some shots to use around the state, so pretty prominent spots around the state, and it was a paying job, but I quoted them, I quoted them about $1,500 per image, and they wanted about 6 of them, and they said, look, that's just way too expensive. We never pay that much for images anymore. I'm like, well, you don't get the images. Like, you've got to get to a point with your work where you turn around and say, well, that's what my work is worth that. If you don't pay it, you don't get it. If the image is so good that you need it to promote your magazine or your tourism or your product or whatever it might be, then you pay the dollars. And I've got no problem now, and I think the universe works in a good way sometimes, where I've got no problem now saying, that's what the price is, and no, you're not getting it for free, you're not getting it for a fraction of that. That's what my work is worth. And if you don't like it, no hard feelings. I hope you get a good photo.
Yeah, and that's the way you've got to be now. And I've been, all the way through my career, I always cringe when I tell someone a price, and I shouldn't do that.
No,
I should value my work. Like, if they've come to me, so and that happens a lot where it's this much. And 9 times out of 10 they say, that's great, thanks, we'll take it.
And that's the thing. Like, you should never. But again, that's how the industry's now been created. Is that it's the same with wedding photographers. You got the backyarders doing it for $500, and you get down here, Tassie's a pretty small market. I do a few weddings, and I'll get an email from someone saying, hey, I need you for the whole day. I want prints, I want an album, I want this, I want that. 10 hours of your day. This is what I want. How much do you charge? By the way, I've already been quoted $500 from such and such. Okay, go get such and such. Oh, but aren't you going to quote as well? No, I'm not.
No,
because I'm not spending. I'm not worth $10 an hour or whatever it is. Like, it's just ridiculous.
So I mean, this is the thing. If you're shooting a wedding for 10 hours, you can multiply that by 10 in the edit.
Yeah, that's right. So. Exactly right. So I say to people that are listening there, and the other thing that's really important as well is it's a bit of a flip side to it as well. Some people who may not have any experience or may not be as proficient as some other people shooting will go out there and charge the stupidest amount for their work. Like they'll go out, I've never shot a wedding before, but it's $10,000 for me to shoot your wedding. Like you've got to, if you're going to try and put a big price tag on your work, it's got to be worthy of the price tag. And I think, like going back to when I started, I shot a lot of weddings for free. I actually, get my portfolio up. I've given a lot of photos away down here to wildlife and tourism and things like that to get my name out there. But at a certain point, you got to say, well, my work is now worth this much, and go from there. But I hear your frustration, and I don't think you're alone. I'm sure we can get comments about, especially photo comps.
They do my nut in.
They're notorious.
Yeah. I don't enter them. It's just because you sign your life away. You sign your image away when you enter them 9 times out of 10. So, and you're not going to win anyway. No. It's rigged. That's rigged.
That's the attitude. Unless it...
Okay, moving right along to our world famous deer cam.
Our world famous.
What did I say? Our world famous?
No, you said world famous. I'm saying it's ours.
Yeah, true. Dear Cam, I woke up this morning to see on my Facebook feed all these great shots of the Aurora at my local coastline. How do you know when it's likely to happen? Is there a weather site or something you can look up? Obviously, by the amount of photos I've seen, a lot of people were out and about waiting for it. How did they know? Cheers, Jenny. Hi, Jenny. I know who you are. You're a good listener. You've been with us for a while. Hi, Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny's one of the originals, I think. Original listeners. So I went through a stage like down here in Tassie because we obviously get a really good display of auroras. You do aurora hunting, and 4 or 5, 6 years ago, it was a really peak season for auroras. So it does come in ebbs and flows, like depending on what's going on with the sun flares and the direction and which way the Earth's spinning and all that kind of jazz. It can get quite frequent, or it can be not as frequent depending on what's happening. But 4 or 5 years ago, it was pretty big, and I was out a lot of nights of the week. It was almost guaranteed at least 3 or 4 times a week you'd have an aurora. But then it started getting really hard, where it started dropping off. There was warnings going off on such apps, which we'll touch on, and then you go out there and there's nothing there. So what I do now, the easiest way for me to find out if an aurora is going on is actually what Jenny said. I look on Facebook, because a lot of people will do back of camera shots and say, hey, it's going off now. The aurora is really taking off in colour or intensity. And that's when I'll get the gear and head out in the car. But in the lead up to that, there's a few things you can do. There is Aurora apps. There's one called the Aurora Forecast, I think it is. I'll have a look now while we're here. There's Aurora Forecast. If you type in Aurora app in the App Store, there's a whole heap of them. And you've got to be careful when you look at them, because sometimes the time zones are set to universal time, and sometimes they're set to the Northern Hemisphere. So generally, if there's something going on in the Northern Hemisphere, there's also something going on the Southern Hemisphere with the poles.
Was just literally going to say that lo and behold, last week, the Northern Lights were running hot. So you can use apps. In regards to... I've got a bit of a theory down here in Tassie, which everyone laughs at me, but I've noticed that when we have the bigger auroras, we actually have a different type of wind pattern down here as well. I've found I've tested it out about a dozen times now. We always seem to have like a northerly sort of northeasterly sort of wind, and it's like a real sort of heavy wind. It's not like blowing a gale, but it just feels like a real balmy sort of wind for Tassie, and that generally sets them off pretty high as well. But I think the easiest way for Jenny is to join a few of the Facebook groups, the Aurora chasing groups and nighttime and starscapes and Aurora groups. There's a few of them. And join those groups and make sure you turn notifications on so you get notified when something's going off. The weather apps, there's a lot of scientific apps. You can look at NASA. You can look at all these different sort of apps. But unless you understand all the readings and the KP readings and the wind directions and the whatever it is, the sun flares and all this kind of stuff. There's a gentleman down here by the name of Kev. Kev's a good old friend of mine. He's Mr. Aurora. He knows. He's actually on Norfolk Island at the moment, and he sent messages out to everyone here in Tassie the other night saying you might want to get out because he saw a big spike on what readings he looks at.
So yeah, Jenny, I joined a few Facebook groups, get some of those apps down, and just keep an eye on Facebook and be ready to go. Obviously, depending on where you live, that is a big factor as well. You need clear skies, preferably no moon, so there's not as much brightness, and get as far south as you can from where you are. But they are very hit and miss. Be prepared, and this is the other thing as well. Like some people think, oh, what's happening behind us? Is that just like a 2-minute thing, or does it go for 5 minutes? This one went for about 8 hours, so they can go all night. So Jenny, if you're going to go out and chase auroras, take a flask of something warm, and some snacks, a head torch, and a seat because you might be there for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. All very, very good advice. And what I was going to suggest was next time that we get word, follow the Down South Photo Show on social media. We will post it right here for you, Jenny. So we'll help you there as well. One great little Facebook page that worked for me was Victorian Storm Chasers. They are great. They are excellent, and they quite often will put up warnings of lightning, storms, anything that's going to be awesome to photograph. Yes. They encourage you to do so safely, of course. They do. They're very, very good at that, and they'll show you modelling and tracking of storms and auroras. So
the app I was using the other night is called My Aurora Forecast, and that actually gives you a warning on your phone saying that the KP index, which is one of the indicators to say that it's going to be a strong aurora, it'll tell you where, based on your location, the KP reading is X, Y, or Z. You might be able to see the aurora from your location. So that was going off the other night. That's the first time that's gone off in probably a couple of years, that app. So, yeah. And
fun fact, named after ex-English cricketer Kevin Peterson. So, wasn't it? No,
he was a bit of he was more than an aurora. He was a phenomenon, man.
He was definitely some kind of phenomenon there. Yeah. If you have a Dear Cam question, by all means, shoot us a message on wherever you can find us. If you go to Facebook and type in the Down South Photo Show, you'll find us there. If you go to Instagram and you put in the Down South Photo Show, you'll find us there. YouTube, etc. So you can leave a comment below if you've got a Dear Cam question. And we want Dear Cam questions about anything to do with landscape photography. It can be gear related. It can be.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah.
It can be about anything.
Landscape photography related. I did want to talk tonight about a bit of gear, but we're going to hold that over for next episode, which may even be later this week. So we might do a double barrel this week to make up for.
Well, when are we going to release this one normally, or are we going to hold on to this?
This should go live. What day is it, Cameron? Today's Monday. This will go live Wednesday, and then we'll probably have another one go live on the weekend. So why not?
It's crazy.
Episode 21 will be next. The gear talk I wanted to touch on, which we'll talk about next week, is DJI have got themselves a new toy. The Mavic 3 has been announced, and it is sensational.
Is it really?
They have... Cameron.
I'm not convinced.
It has the same sensor as your Olympus EM1 Mark III in it.
Yep.
Oh, baby. No, it's very, very nice. I know you're not a drone fan, and that's fine.
I don't mind drones, but...
we won't drone on about it. We'll say keep your powder dry for...
If you would like to stop Brendan saying these bad dad jokes, send donations too.
Yeah, maybe we could start... No, anyway. Well, no,
a GoFundMe page.
Yeah, that's right. That's the podcast. Cam, what have you got coming up for the coming week? How long before you go rafting?
5 days.
Right.
I disappear on Saturday.
You disappeared half an hour ago off this screen. So
I did disappear. I was just preparing the viewers for what it looks like without me.
Like someone snapped their fingers.
No,
I wonder if I could do the podcast solo. Oh, that'd be awful.
We have had a few people put their hand up.
Have we?
Absolutely.
Who does the auditioning? Me or you?
It's got to be me, surely.
Don't throw me under the bus, man. I'll tell you. I want someone who can give me a bit of feedback if I'm talking to a brick wall.
There's a guy on the west coast of Tassie who's put his hand up just recently.
So bring it on.
We got a pre-trip meeting 2:00 this Friday, and then we head off on the river on Saturday, and where we're going is expecting snow on Sunday. So
brilliant.
Yippee-ki-yay. I can't
I'm
wait.
looking forward to seeing some awesome photos. So which river are we on, the Franklin? Or?
We're going down the Franklin. We are rafting for
Fantastic.
8 days down the Franklin. I have we had a group of 7 people, but 4 of them had to pull out because of good old COVID and borders. So we've joined forces with another tour that was in the same boat, so to speak. So it's going to be an all Tasmanian tour with a boat of photographers and another couple of boats of general punters. We're looking forward to it. I've just been speaking to guests tonight. They're super excited. We've got our Pelican cases that we're getting ready to put our gear in and getting all prepared for that. So yeah, I'll be gone pretty much Saturday to this following Sunday. So
very cool, very well. As I say, I'm looking forward to seeing the photos, and I'm a wee bit jealous. That's going to be a great trip.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about what we're doing at Camera and Photo. Workshops are back. Bookings are flying in. So the entry-level DSLR workshop, which is hands down my most popular in-store workshop. I've got 1 spot left for the Ocean Grove workshop. I've got 3 spots left for my Torquay workshop. So that's been a great response. I knew there would be after 2 years not being able to run them. So by the time this goes out, there may not be any spots left. However, if you hit my website, cameraandphoto.com.au, go to the workshops page and you can see if any availability if you want to join in with one of those. Does that
mean that people have been sitting around for 2 years not knowing how to use their cameras?
Absolutely, and we're going to set them straight, mate. We're going to get them on the straight and narrow. I also am now forward planning for January 2022 for entry-level, intermediate and landscapes and seascapes. But I knew I had a lot of people knocking on my door about the entry-level one, so that's why we're running those first. Yeah. If I can squeeze in an intermediate workshop before Christmas, I will. December is crazy town for me. So we shall, being in retail, so we shall see.
Yep. We'll see you in January.
I think we'll be lucky to get a podcast out in December, but we'll give it a nudge.
We'll make. Maybe I'll solo. I'll get a guest host.
I'll get a guest host.
All right. Maybe we should do that. We should just do one each.
I've got this guy on the west coast of Tassie who I can listen to. You might like.
Yeah, that could be a short podcast.
All good, Cam?
All good, mate. Thank you again. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for your company. Yes, thanks everyone for tuning into episode 20 of the Down South Photo Show. We shall see you possibly in only a couple of days' time for episode 21. See you guys.
Giddy up. Ciao.
Giddy up.
Giddy up. We're talking about horses. I couldn't.